What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be revisiting the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G and going over whether or not it's still a good phone to buy in 2023. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. And in case you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with this phone, we're getting a 6.5-inch 90Hz PLS TFT display. We're getting a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 81.1% screen to body ratio. So in general, for being more of an entry-level phone, this display is definitely not bad for what it is. At 6.5 inches, it is decently large. So if you're on your phone doing stuff like reading, web browsing, social media, watching videos every now and then, and really just more basic activities, this phone is definitely large enough to give you a good experience. And with the 20:9 aspect ratio, we're getting a decently tall and narrow form factor. So if you're doing something in landscape mode, like maybe watching a video or looking at photos, you're gonna get a more immersive experience, and things are gonna look a little bit nicer and more cinematic. And if you're doing something like reading, web browsing, social media, stuff like that, with a tall and narrow form factor, you'll be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. Aside from the size and dimensions, the image quality is pretty decent too. Despite only having a 720p resolution, I do think the image is at least decently sharp for what it is, and the colors do look pretty good as well. And with a 90Hz refresh rate, the movement on the screen is gonna be a little bit faster and smoother, so in general, the phone is gonna feel more premium to use. Now, all this being said, despite the display again being at least decent for what it is, it's still not really anything special. And at this point in 2023, there are phones out there that have much better displays for around the same price. So in general, on one hand, if you're not really going to be on your phone a lot and you're really just after something decent that works, then this phone will definitely get the job done. But if you're really consuming a lot of content, maybe you're always on social media or watching videos, playing games, stuff like that, and the image quality is going to be a lot more important to you, then in that case, while the display we're getting here is definitely not bad, for around the same price, you can definitely do better. Now for storage, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G has 64GB of internal storage, so for a more entry-level device, it's definitely not bad. Now if you're really more of a power user, if you're constantly downloading all kinds of apps, games, stuff like that, or maybe you're not really sure what you're going to be doing with your phone, but you want to make sure you're never going to have to worry about space, then no, this is probably not the best option for you. But for the average user, as long as you're mindful of what you're putting on your phone, 64GB will be at least acceptable. And keep in mind, this phone does also have microSD card expansion, so if you have a bunch of photos and videos, for example, you can always offload that stuff onto a microSD card, and that's definitely going to help a little. For security features, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G does have Face Unlock, and we're also getting a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key. So definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner, and I do appreciate that we're getting multiple different options besides a pin to unlock it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and give the fingerprint scanner a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So real fast and responsive, no issues at all. Now for the camera setup here, it's really not bad, but if you're taking a lot of pictures, and that's really the main thing you're gonna be doing with your phone, I do feel like you can do better. Up front here, we got a 5-megapixel selfie camera. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50-megapixel main camera, a 2-megapixel macro camera, and a 2-megapixel depth sensing camera. So as you can see, unfortunately, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, and I feel like at this point in 2023, having an ultra-wide camera, especially for a 5G phone like this, is more or less gonna be an expectation. There's so many phones in this price range, and even quite a bit lower for that matter, that do have ultra-wide cameras, including the 4G version of this phone for some reason. So in general, again, if you're taking a lot of pictures, and maybe you want a wider variety of features, then this is probably not going to be the best phone for you. But that being said, again, despite not having the best camera setup, it still really isn't bad, and the photo quality itself is actually pretty good. So if you want to get the occasional nice photo here and there, maybe for something like social media, but you're still not going to be constantly taking pictures, and the camera really isn't a main priority for you, then in that case, the camera setup we're getting here is at least going to get the job done. But that being said, when it comes to photo quality, this is definitely more of a subjective thing. So if you want to get a better idea of what this phone's camera can do, definitely check out my full camera review for it, which I will be linking to in the video description. Now, as far as RAM and processor go, with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 5G processor. Now, when it comes to the overall performance, on one hand, compared to most 5G phones I've used, the A13 5G is definitely on the slower side. And if you're going to be on your device all day, especially if you're doing more demanding activities like mobile gaming, for example, then you're probably going to want to go with something else, because while the performance really isn't terrible, there are lots of other options that are honestly quite a bit faster. But if you're really just looking for something for more basic activities, like occasional web browsing and social media and stuff like that, and you're not really going to be on your phone a lot, then in that case, while again, compared to other phones like it, this is definitely not the fastest option. For more light use, it will at least be acceptable. Now, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and here are the results I got. Now, what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of whether or not this phone's going to be a performance upgrade for you. because depending on what you're coming from, it may or may not be. But again, in general, for more light use, in the more basic activities like web browsing, social media, watching a few videos here and there, and maybe some of the more simple mobile gaming, this phone will at least be fast enough for that kind of activity. But if you are more of a heavy user, you're most likely going to want something a bit faster. Now for the battery, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G is actually really good. With this phone, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15-watt fast charging, so you can expect to get some great battery life and longevity out of it. If you're in a situation where maybe you're not always around a charger, but you still have to use your phone all day, in that case, this phone is definitely going to be a great option. And with the 15-watt fast charging, while it's not really the best fast charging you can get, in my experience, the charging speeds are really good, so you won't have to worry about that either. In addition to this, with this phone, we are getting NFC, so if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, you can do this no problem with this phone. Taking a look at the overall design here, it's definitely not really unique or anything, but for what it is, it doesn't really look bad. The back is made of a sort of matte material, and in certain lighting you can kind of see fingerprints, but it's really not too bad. As you can probably imagine, with the exception of the glass display, this phone is made entirely of plastic, but despite definitely not looking or feeling premium, the materials do at least feel sturdy, the build quality is pretty good, and the phone does have a decent amount of weight to it. So in general, while the design and materials really aren't anything unique, the A13 5G doesn't really look or feel cheap like a lot of phones in this price range. But in conclusion, is the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G still worth buying in 2023? Now on one hand, I definitely don't think this is a bad phone, and in fact, back in late 2021 when it first came out, I actually did consider it to be a pretty good deal for what it was. But that being said, in 2023, things are a little bit different, with carriers offering all kinds of deals on 5G phones, and even some carriers like Cricket and T-Mobile for example offering their own branded phones. There's a lot more competition out there, and at this point for the money, you can most likely get another 5G phone that has much better performance, a better camera setup, more storage, and just better features in general. Honestly, at this point, even if you could get this phone for free, there are most likely going to be some other phones you can also get for free that are just better than this one. Now, if you are looking for a really entry-level 5G phone, and you really just want 5G connectivity and maybe NFC, and aside from that, you don't really care about deals or features, and you just want things to be usable, then in that case, sure, you could get the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, and you're probably not going to be disappointed. But really, at the end of the day, in 2023, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G just really doesn't bring anything new to the table, and if you really want to get the best value for your money, you definitely can do better. Now, once again, in case you do want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.